These are classic wooden powerboats. They're primarily constructed of mahogany and heavy on the chrome accents. Most of them are 60, 80, even 100 years old. Built by hand, board by board, by true craftsmen. You don't own this kind of boat because you need to, or because you want to. You own this kind of boat because you have to. And that's what mahogany and chrome is all about. Just because it's called mahogany and chrome doesn't mean that every boat that we feature has to have exotic wood and chrome plating. In fact, you could build today's featured classic for about $300. And after seeing the Brendella ski boat, you're probably going to want to. We're back in northern Idaho, where gorgeous Lake Coeur d'Alene forms the epicenter of one of the strongest classic boating communities in America. Here, the passion for wood boats is so intense that a few local builders still build these mahogany gems in the classic tradition, only with 21st century features. There are so many antique power boats in the area, several independent restoration shops produce award-winning work right here in Coeur d'Alene. With a history of classic boating that stretches back to the steamship era, it makes sense that Coeur d'Alene serves as home surf, if you will, to the Inland Empire chapter of the Antique and Classic Boat Society. This chapter has about 135 members and dozens of classic boats in its ranks. Awarded ACBS Chapter of the Year in 2018, it sponsors or participates in several antique and classic boat shows a year. In fact, the ACBS International Boat Show will be held right here in 2021, so make your travel plans now. The Inland Empire chapter of the ACBS is a great group of folks. They're always ready to help out with an old boat restoration, so be sure to check them out in our links. In addition to the first-class boats at Lake Coeur d'Alene, northern Idaho is also home to a timber industry that dates back to the 1800s. Nearby sawmills produce everything from 2x4s to telephone poles and architectural timbers. Practicing renewable conservation methods, local timber operations churn out trainloads of environmentally responsible chipboard, OSB, and good old-fashioned plywood, the staple of so many do-it-yourself projects. And that's where today's sleeper boat comes in. Me Too is a 1958 Brendella outboard runabout, and it's made almost entirely of, you guessed it, humble plywood. We caught up with owner Daryl Reynolds at the boathouse he designed and built specifically for his hobby of restoring classic boats.
I'm Daryl Reynolds Jr. I live in Post Falls, Idaho on the Spokane River. I've been around water all my life. Always had a passion for it. I own, of course, the 1958 Brendella, which is the runabout outboard. I own a 1936 Chris Craft double cockpit forward custom deluxe. And I own a small sailboat. It's made by Portland Clipper, which is no longer in business, that I'm restoring for my grandson. And then I own a 1947 Chris Craft double cockpit forward deluxe custom runabout as well. It's more of a family heirloom than it is anything else. You don't ever see it much in the water. At Christmas one year, I got a small mahogany Chris Craft model that had a little electric motor in it, ran on a D-size battery, and the smell of the mahogany and the boat itself, I just absolutely loved it. And that's what got me into boats. When I retired, that's what I wanted to do, was work on wooden boats. It's doing something with your hands, and it gives you satisfaction that you can complete it. I mean, most people look at these boats and they put them on the burn pile. I look at these boats, it's a challenge, one, to restore them. I like tinkering with stuff to make it work, especially working on the engines and stuff that haven't run for 20, 30 years, that have been sitting outside. But working with the wood and working with your hands, and most of it's done with hand tools. We don't use a lot of power tools, maybe for cutting some of the wood and stuff, but the rest of it's all sanded by hand and planed by hand, which really is an art. My dad purchased the 1958 Brendella in 1962 from a gentleman in Covina, California for approximately $200, boat, motor, and trailer. The boat itself was a 14-foot boat, probably 3/8-inch plywood, and framed and varnished at that point. We worked on it as a father and son restoration project. We didn't know what we were doing at that point, but we did do it because everybody was water skiing and we didn't have a boat. So my dad took the time to put the boat together with us. It took us over a year. And we water skied on Puddingstone Lake, Castaic, and Lake Piru in Southern California, and also Lake Shasta and Trinity. My dad was an All-American for Minnesota. In 1941, he enlisted in the Army Air Corps, Cadet Corps, and was an engineer on a B-24 and flew with the 8th Air Force. He loved that boat. We worked on that engine to get it running.
Now, before you decide to run out for a load of lumber and start building your own Brendella, I should mention that there's a big difference between regular old let's build a treehouse plywood and marine plywood. Marine plywood is stronger and more moisture resistant than regular plywood, which tends to have a lot of imperfections, air pockets, and gaps in its layers. Marine plywood has far fewer defects in each of its sandwich layers. The same thing goes for the surface. And in case you're doubting the strength and durability of marine plywood, consider that the Higgins boat landing craft used in the D-Day invasion at Normandy were mostly built of plywood. After the war, Higgins offered a line of plywood powerboats for the civilian market, which are very collectible today. Marine plywood also features cross-laminated layers for strength that are bound together with a waterproof adhesive, which makes it ideal for boat building. Looking at Me Too, it's obvious that marine plywood can produce a great-looking finish, which is nice, but will it deliver a great performance? We'll find out. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is home to Daryl Reynolds and his 1958 Brendella ski boat, Me Too. And he's got the origin story on plywood boats like his that bridge the gap between mahogany and chrome classics that ruled the market up through the 1950s and the space-age technology of fiberglass that transformed the pleasure boat industry in the 1960s.
The Brendella is, the gentleman's name, I don't know his first name, but his last name was Brendella, and he started building those boats in Sepulveda, California. That boat became one of the first ski boats, such as Ski Nautique. Most of the boats at that time were being phased into fiberglass, so these boats were inexpensive to buy and purchase and rebuild. My brothers and I all learned to water ski behind that boat, and I obviously weighed a lot less than I do now. But the boat, we used it almost every other weekend water skiing in Southern California and then taking it on vacation. My dad died when he was 49 and I was 21, and the boat fell completely in disrepair to the point where the transom rotted off and a lot of stuff. So we put a lot of time and hours. It took about a year to rebuild that boat. It's a complete restoration of the boat. It's got the same white stripes, all the hardware on the boat, the motor, everything, the trailer included, are all original. And we restored it back to its originality. The cost to rebuild it was more than the cost of the Chris Craft we have sitting here that I've got into it right now. So it's a very understanding wife. I had my mother on the boat before she passed away after we rebuilt it. I took her out for a ride in it and took a picture of her. She had to smile from one side of her face to the other because she brought back memories of the 3 boys and my father out there on the lakes water skiing with that boat.
We asked Daryl if it would be possible to show the Brendella doing what it was built to do, pull a water skier. Even though she's a showboat, he didn't hesitate. We first tried convincing our chaseboat captain Taylor from Hagedon Marine Group to ski behind the Brendella. Taylor loves to wake surf, but she'd never water skied and insisted she wasn't about to learn on camera. She did suggest the ideal candidate, though, in a young man named Chase, an accomplished water skier and wakeboarder from Coeur d'Alene. Chase said he was stoked to ski behind an antique boat. No surprise there. He showed up with a contemporary slalom ski, one he's used behind all kinds of boats, just not a 58 Brendella. And as usually happens when old technology meets modern materials, things almost never go quite as planned. Are you having doubts that a 58 Brendella can pull a modern skier? Yeah, me too. So far, no good. Me Too is struggling to pull a modern-day water skier on the headwaters of the Spokane River.
I think we need to take weight out of the boat.
Now, in Me Too's defense, one of our producers jumped in alongside owner Daryl Reynolds to serve as a spotter for the water skier, as required by law. Daryl and Joe Don are 2 pretty big fellas for a small boat, on top of trying to pull an adult water skier. The tiny Brendella's vintage Mercury outboard really had to dig deep for every ounce of horsepower. After several failed attempts, Me Too was running low on gas, but Chase wasn't about to give up. With a new tank of gas, a more petite spotter, and a pair of vintage water skis, it was time to try again.
I think that's it.
That's so hard.
You got your suit on?
No. This one looks pretty promising.
Yep.
Get it, buddy!
After several of his best torpedo impersonations and a ton of grueling effort, Chase broke the grip of the Spokane River, and sure enough, the old Brendella still had what it took.
The last time we had a skier up on it was my son, probably 4 years ago, when he came up to me and put the old life jacket on and said, "Hey, Dad, for old time's sake, let's go for a ride." So that was the last time we had anybody up on it. So, but today was kind of special to see somebody skiing behind it again. There's no feeling like it. It's one of the most amazing. Nothing rides like a wood boat, whether it's a plywood boat or whether it's a Chris Craft or a Century or a Hacker Craft. They really ride completely different than fiberglass boats. The best part about the boat is once you get it in the water is, first of all, people stop and look at you and see what's going on.
There's something transformative about seeing a classic boat on the water. They have a way of taking everyone who sees them back in time. That morning on the Spokane River, all activity stopped as every boat in sight flashed a thumbs up at the Me Too pulling a water skier on a pair of vintage skis. This scene is the essence of classic boating. Sure, the plywood Brendella's about the furthest thing from what everybody envisions in a mahogany and chrome classic, but to us, what makes a boat a classic isn't necessarily how old it is, how rare, or who built it, or even what it's made of. What makes a boat a true classic are the memories it makes, the adventures taken, and the passion the owner puts into bringing the boat back to life for others to enjoy. And those are precisely the qualities that make this 1958 Brendella ski boat worthy of inclusion on Mahogany and Chrome. It's always a great day on the water. If you like what you saw, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button, and we'll keep bringing you more antique and classic boat adventures. I'm Ty Harcott. We'll see you next time on Mahogany and Chrome.